everybody, and welcome to another edition of Advancio Talks. As always, I am your host, Jay Ibarra, and today we have an amazing topic to cover. And the title for today's conversation is Supply Chain Crunch: Data and Devices as Real-Time Heroes. As mentioned today, we have an amazing speaker joining us today. He's also part of the Advancio team, and I'm really happy to have him here today with us, sharing his knowledge and his expertise. And now, before I go ahead and introduce him to you, over to you guys, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Advancio and what we do here. So Advancio, it's a global software development and IT consulting company based in Los Angeles, California. We're powered by uniquely talented individuals with a passion for problem solving and technology. We can either develop your project or match you with the best tech talent. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today. His name is Max Samaripa. He's a full stack developer and tech lead at Advancio. He's currently working with .NET and Angular frameworks, and his experience in the logistics industry is primarily driven by providing tools for registering, monitoring, and tracking deliveries, as well as active transportation systems. Max, thank you for being here today and being part of another edition of the talk.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to discuss and talk about this topic.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you, and just for this topic in particular, I mean, we couldn't think of anybody else. I mean, you're a pro at this, and we're really glad you could share your expertise and your knowledge in the industry. And now, Max, let's do this. Let's jump into a topic. Normally, what I like to do is I prepare a set of questions for the speakers that join the conversation, and right at the end, after my questionnaire, I like to call it a little quiz that I prepare for you guys. After the little quiz, we normally have a QA session, and we're gonna have an open mic. So everybody that joined the conversation, or everybody that is barely coming into the talk, just at the end, we're gonna have a QA session. Just drop in your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them over to you. Now, Max, let's jump into topic. If you allow me to, I'll like to ask you the first question that we have prepared today for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, man. Well, let's jump into topic. So the first question is, what are the challenges that businesses in the logistics industry are currently facing around real-time inventory management and delivery?
Well, I can speak more about the delivery aspect, but in general terms, the logistics industry right now, one of the biggest challenges is the amount of demand, basically. So try to picture that the logistic industry usually you have a floor of multiple employees that are tracking multiple shipments at the same time. So each employee or each team of employees have multiple shipments, and each employee needs to be in charge of multiple of them at the same time. So, and I emphasize the fact about the same time because basically this implies that you need to be keeping an eye on everything at the same time, and you need to be worried about what's happening, and you need to have tools that allow you to know what's happening and keep you be ahead of curve in every moment. Know what if you have an inconvenience, how you can solve it, if everything is on track, sorry. And so the biggest challenge right now is which tools allow a single person to cover more loads, basically. So on the first instance, you can have on the past, before you have digital tools, you have a person doing multiple calls, trying to communicate with a lot of people. You needed to have a network of people around you that could solvent any kind of issue, inform you in real time, report you in real time what's happening every moment, and you need to be in contact communication with the driver, basically, to know that the shipment and the load is going to arrive on time. Right now, with the advantage of the tools, you can know where the shipments are, and that allows you to be wary about which loads you need to prioritize over which loads are going on time. If you have a delay in some load, you can take measures around it and try to solve them as soon as possible. So that's the main goal, is to have everything online and have everything being as real time as possible, and try to have open channels of communication between the broker, which is the name they call the employees that work in this industry, as um, getting loads and trying to be in charge of being worried that the shipment is going to be arrived on time, and try to communicate with the customer, which is usually the person that employs the logistic company to transport shipments across states, cities, or countries, basically. And so I hope that answered the question.
It actually did. Thank you, Max, for sharing that insight and your knowledge. Now, adding a little bit to your note and your reply to the question, I actually read an article on Forbes the other day, and I read that 24% of small businesses they're actually still implementing manual tracking processes. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's still, we're in 2022, and after the pandemic, the demand for supply chain transportation it only increased tremendously, and by be doing in manual processes, I mean, I imagine it could be a headache just trying to implement those strategies. Actually, the big companies right now, what they're doing right now, they're just moving their warehouses to strategic locations, right? That's in order for them to improve the inventory management process. That's that's a big thing right now. And
Mm-hmm.
like I told you, after the pandemic, this transportation, logistics, supply chain industry, it only grew tremendously. The demand is huge, and
Yeah.
having a well defined process, I mean, it could only benefit you a lot and obviously bring more business into your company. Now, Max, I'd like to jump into another question that I have prepared here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, how long does it take to catch inconsistencies in your tracking if they're not automated? And could you share your normal daily process with us?
Okay, well, that's a great question, because as I infer in my previous answer about how you mentioned that small companies still do it manually, you need someone to tell you that something's wrong, basically, and that can take a long while. And there's human factor involved with it. Obviously, someone needs to be reporting and be trustworthy that something went wrong and report it as soon as possible. And that person that they reported to maybe it's not the broker itself. So there is like a chain of communication that needs to go through in order for the broker to know that they need to step in and try to solve the issue. So they can take hours or even days on the worst scenarios. And that's crazy to think about in this high demand process on which people are waiting for having the supplies as soon as possible, the inventory as soon as possible. And and so it can take a long time, and that's actually impact business, as you can imagine, because having containers stop, having uh, um, the delivery stop, basically the shipment or the load stuck in some place, is going to cause issues in the whole chain. And to emphasize that the supply chain basically involves every kind of product you can imagine, even the small minute things that you assume that is going to be always available is part of the supply chain. And we lived that through the pandemic when the supply chains have impacts and the ports have issues and they were missing drivers, how it impacts every one of us. And I think that everyone that's listening right now can remember how that impacts the supply basically on the convenience store, in supermarkets, everywhere basically. So having that kind of delays is greatly impactful, and yeah, it can take a long time to detect that kind of issues if you don't have something automated and you rely on the human process alone. And to answer the second question about the daily process, that's an interesting question, because the brokers themselves need to be worried about how every achievement they're working on is at the moment. So they need tools to know it, or people to know it in the worst case scenario, that they need to focus on what achievement they're covering multiple loads at the same time. So that implies that they need to know which one they need to focus on, and based on that they can make strategies around and take actions to help out or to help with documentation, transporting loads across miles have a lot of challenges depending on local regulations, permissions, and every other kind of and the kind of load you are covering also impacts a lot which kind of permissions you need, which kinds of insurance you need, and that kind of paperwork is part of the worker broker to have everything aligned and everything documented. So they need to be aware what they need to focus daily is which is the more urgent load they need to help, basically. So the loads that are is still on delayed, the trucks that are still, or the loads that need to be covered, basically, there it could be that you have a shipment that is stuck in a container storage or a warehouse, and you need someone to pick it up because you're incurring into fees basically for having that load take a space, and they're going to charge you. So to cover to have an available truck to transport as soon as possible. So they need to see which is the more important thing to cover, tackle that issue, and then move along to try to get more business. Basically, get in contact and see which other customer needs transportation and try to cover that load wherever it means necessary. There are logistics companies that have their own assets, which are basically trucks that they can, uh, that maybe they are available to quest on and have them go to pick up the loads, or they may need to subcontract other companies that help them with transportation. And closing deals and having a margin over that is where the company thrive, basically.
Excellent. Yeah, of course. And I mean, adding a little bit to what you mentioned about the the human part of still being, implementing the human part in warehouses. It's actually almost 50% of warehouse issues are the human error factor, and that's something that can obviously be greatly benefited or reduced tremendously if you implement if you have systemized process. Obviously, because the inventory control process just involves from since the moment the person checks out their little cart in their shopping place online, then since the warehouse receives the order, they pack it, they send it till they actually buyer receives their package. That's a full process that has to be systemized, and in between those processes, it requires a lot of people, and that's where the human error could be, right? So
Yep.
yeah, obviously it's always good to have it systemized and have a system in place that can help you get through all this and avoid errors. Could actually represent a lot of loss in a company. Now, Max, thank you for answering the question. I have another question for you over here. So, what are the best technologies to improve product tracking?
Yeah, so right now, and you can go back a little bit to how things used to be in the past. So before the internet, that you have it, the smartphones and stuff, the trucker need to inform basically where they at every single stop, basically. So when we start having GPS and geolocalization, you can start having devices in the trucks that can tell the company where the truck is. And those devices at the time were like machines that are inside the trailers. Itself, there is still trucks and there is still technology that is inside the trailers that can do this. But with the invention of the smartphone, and each smartphone has a GPS basically, so companies can have drivers install applications in their smartphones to keep track of where they are basically, and also have a channel of communication. That's something that I also talked a little bit earlier. That an open channel of communication between the broker, the driver, understanding what's going through, if they need help, they need any kind of support, they need paperwork, whatever. But with this kind of technology, they can know where the truck is at all times and understand what is the velocity, if they are going to arrive on time. Basically, they can start to doing some kind of processing of the data to start knowing that based on the velocity they're having, they're going to arrive at an estimated time, they're going to reach the appointment, or they're going to miss it, for example. And that kind of advantage of technology, having the trucks communicated with the internet, and and the system collecting data, is when it helps a ton to basically have a big picture of what's going on with all of the loads that a broker is working on. I hope that answered the question.
It does. It does actually. Thank you, Max, for sharing your knowledge on that part as well. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes. The part of that technology plays a big part here in this industry. And like I said, it supply chain is only growing big time right now. So yeah, I mean, obviously, implementing a well-defined tag and system here, it could only help a lot into the equation. Now, Max, I have another question for you, and this one's about accidents. Um, how data and devices help logistic businesses to prevent and mitigate all these accidents?
Oh, interesting. That's a really good question because basically with having knowledge about how the trucks are doing and I, the part I really like about the question about how to prevent and mitigate and you can detect issues or incidents basically with you're having this truck going in the highway, for example, and from nothing it stops. So you can build a system around that and say, oh, something went wrong. It shouldn't be a place for rest, basically. And you can have alerts based on that. But also, something interesting about collecting that kind of data because it's not only about the real time. You have an historical record about what happened previously and what other loads happened, and you can start to match what happened, for example, in winter months, and you can start detecting which routes are dangerous or which routes the driver needs to be more wary about. And the drivers know that information, but you can also know which kind of loads they can or they cannot move or how you're going to picture to the customer an estimation of when the load is going to how long the load is going to take because you can be optimist and say that a road is going to be a truck in the road is going to be as fast as in summer as in this winter, but that's a lie. Basically, you know that there are certain conditions that can happen, and you can sum up and have the broker be the one kind with his knowledge and experience, their knowledge or experience to detect and prevent those kind of scenarios. But you can also have the tools have that the tools be an alerting that maybe there is not a great idea to move a load that weighs so much in that kind of in that state at that time of year, for example. And you can start having these kind of preventive measures to assure that the loads are going to get the destination, the driver is going to be safe, and that everyone's going to be happy with realistic timelines about how much it's going to take to move the load across the region that might be in a difficult situation based on the time of year. And I'm saying just one example, basically. But you can also start doing like there are regulations in the United States, Mexico, and other countries related with how much a driver can drive, basically, how much hours they can drive. And you can start detecting that if a driver is working overtime, for example, that's dangerous. Having a driver overtime with not enough sleep on the road, transporting something that may be dangerous or precious cargo, or in general, having a driver exhausted driving on the road is dangerous. So you can start having measures to alert the driver that they should be taking to step down a little bit and rest a little bit. And the human factor is also important with these kind of tools. And I'm going to emphasize that the fact that we are talking about tools. The human factor is also important. The brokers are humans that need to be in charge of these tools, and they are going to use the tools in a way that is responsible and is going to assure that the business thrive, basically. I hope that I really like the topic.
Yeah, yeah, it does answer the question, Max. Thank you. Yeah, and obviously it's a big factor. It's uh, avoiding accidents. It's something that we've been trying to do for ages, right? And it's good. It's cool to hear that with a system, with an app, with a mobile app, with something that can be developed previously, you can actually. I mean, obviously, you're not going to prevent 100% of the accidents, but I mean, you can actually mitigate and prevent them from happening or avoiding them in a way. So that's great. That's why I'm fascinated about this industry and the way technology could help in this industry. Max, I have another question for you. So to illustrate the whole process with the audience today, can you give us a daily example of how data, systems, and devices focused on specific businesses' goals are helping support transportation and delivery strategies?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there are multiple services that are out there that can provide intel about how achievement is going, and there are different kind of achievements. Obviously, there are the normal like lows that are are transported by trucks, but you can also have intermodal loads, which are shipments that went through a rail, which is basically a train, or they can also go on a boat, and they need to be on port. So basically, on a daily status, you can have a broker which has multiple shipments at the same time, and you can have shipments that are maybe on the ocean and still waiting to arrive to a port. So the system itself, what it's going to do is going to catch all of this data as real time as possible and try to consolidate the information so the broker can know what's happening with the loads, or if there are signs that they need to pick up a container, basically they can plan ahead and say the container is going to arrive on an estimated date, and you can plan ahead and see which truck is available to pick that. Be on time, get the cargo and move it. Because as I mentioned in a previous question, you can incur into fees because you can store containers like in warehouses, but there some of them have like some free days, but in general terms, they're going to charge you. And every time you're charged, you're going to lose a margin of profit. So you want to be ahead of that. You want to have everyone available so the achievement doesn't stop and halts. And in that sense, what's going to happen is that the system is going to get this information. So when the brokers go to the office, they can see what's happening with my achievement or on the road, basically what's going on with them. I can take measures to attend the higher severity or the higher like importance, the priority ones, and then I can focus on the other ones. What's the next steps on the next ones? They need to move it to maybe some achievements may be moved by multiple trucks, for example. So you need to coordinate where they're going to, which point they're going to see each other to exchange the cargo. So one truck can go and maybe spend time with the family, and the other truck is going to finish the achievement, or if they need to pick up some other load along the way, or if they, for example, once a shipment finish the travel, you still have a trucker which may be out of town. So they need to go back to their town, and you can see opportunities in there because you can see that, yeah, they need to go back to their own state, for example, but along the way they can pick up this other load and move it while they're coming back home, basically. So they're going to still going back home regardless. So you can also benefit of that, avoiding basically what is called bobtailing, just having the shipment always, the trucks always trying to move cargo just to have a better profit, basically. And so the brokers have information, they can start planning ahead, and once the end of the day they had a better picture, and the cycle continue each other day, trying to get more loads and trying to get more business, basically.
Excellent, thank you, Max. Did I tell you, people in the audience, Max is a pro at this industry. He really knows what he's talking about. Now, Max, talking about what's next, right, in terms of the trends and in total, and talking about the industry in general. What are the digital trends coming in the logistics industry that we should know about, of course?
Interesting question. Well, I already like alluded a little bit of the idea of having like this historical record, because you're capturing a lot of metrics. As soon as you're having like live metrics come through the system, you have this historical data, and it can be useful if you have someone looking into the data, but it's also more useful if you have something like machine learning. So you have this ton of data, this enormous amount of historical records that can help you to plan ahead the next year and trying to improve the performance, the profits, the shares of the company, and plan ahead. So what happens with machine learning is that you can create specific uses for it. So for example, as I said previously, you can have machine learning that help you to detect which loads are the best option for a driver based on where they live, based on certain factors. For example, the year, the kind of truck they're moving. You can also to plan ahead months ahead, basically, to see you need to have truckers available because in this time of year, this port has a lot of traffic, for example, or there are certain days that are known by the industry that have a lot of movement. For example, one obvious one is, for example, December. A lot of freight is moved on December, but there are also other points around the year that have a lot of movement, and you can start planning ahead with when you have your assets, where is the best place to start planning, or what kind of business you can do with your locals, basically. So machine learning is a big tool that is coming through, and having a lot of information feeding the machine learning is going to help you be improve a lot faster. So the more data you have, the sharpest and the more fine-tuned the machine learning is going to be, and in general terms, the best opportunities you're going to have and help you to achieve your goals.
Excellent. Thank you, Max. Thank you for sharing that part. Now, what is the next step for the industry for transportation industry to expand operations through technology?
That's a great question. And I want to give a little bit of context about how IT has been involved in the logistic industry to answer that. Previously, once the internet came and you start having like a specialized software in the logistics companies to have to process all of the data that was previously stored in computers without internet, Excel files and that kind of stuff, or even like paper records, what happened is that every single company tried to make their own custom software. Basically, everyone tried to reinvent the wheel, trying to understand how they can do business with this new technology and how it's going to help them thrive. And after a while, what happened is that third-party companies start offering generic solutions. Basically, these uh, tools that will do one for all. So you have this generic tool that is going to be used for many companies and try to do a generic approach to tracking the shipments to XYZ. And and that's fine. But what started to happen is that the demand grow and more companies started to join in, and every single one started to use the same kind of tools. But companies try to specialize themselves to have like their own market. And based on that, having a generic tool is more a hindrance than a benefit in some of the scenarios, because maybe your company is specialized in intermodal transportation, and there are not a lot of tools for that specifically. So in that case, you need to mismatch the uses of generic tools to try to solvent that, or you can try to build your own again. And that's what started to happen. A lot of logistic companies were doing what they are doing right now is, with the experience they have with the generic tools, they're trying to build their own custom tailored version of them. What are the strengths of the business and how these tools can enforce them, or what are the weaknesses and how these tools can mitigate them. So right now we are in this stage on which many companies are starting to build their own tools again. Um, so right now, and answering the question directly, expand operation is basically right now. I think that, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of companies doesn't have like do it a lot of stuff manually still. So the first step for them is try to at least migrate to a tool, to a software tool, basically. And after that is try to build what are the weakness that the tool and how the tool doesn't fit with their own specialization, and how they can basically build their own version. A small, they can start small basically and try something that can integrate with the tools that they have, at least process-wise. And then you can start building something that could replace the third-party tools, because obviously the third-party tools take a cut of the cake, and that's hitting the margins. So once you have your own tools that are basically free of charge, once they are built, you have a lot of margin and you have something custom, tailor-made for the business.
Excellent. Thank you, Max, for answering the question and the rest of the questions. Yeah, that was actually the last one that I prepared for you today. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your expertise here. Now, I believe it'll be fair enough to jump into the QA session. Max, what do you think?
Sounds great.
Excellent. Yeah, I believe we have a couple of questions already that they've been dropping in here. And again, I remind to the audience that if you have any questions, just drop it in the comment section, or just, if you're live on Facebook or LinkedIn, just in the comment section, just type your question and we'll be happy to answer it to you. So far, we have a couple of questions and I'm going to ask them over to you, um, Max, so you can keep sharing your knowledge and your expertise in the industry. Now, so here's the first question. It says, do I need a specific IT team inside my company to start an automation process?
Well, what I have seen so far is I think you don't need like to contract your own IT department necessarily inside of the office. But what you really will need is like a business analyst, someone that is in the floor, understanding which are the strengths or weaknesses of the company, and trying to abstract it into a product, basically. And once you have someone that is in direct contact with the floor, and you can start having people that can be outside of the company to help you design the product and to build it, test it, and have it built basically outside of it. And that's also going to be beneficial in the sense that you don't need to commit the company to having a whole IT department, which can be really costly. So yeah, I would suggest that try to focus first on the having a business analyst, someone that can be kind of your point of contact with any kind of IT division. It could be inside of the company or it could be outside of it. I will go lean towards a little bit more about having persons that are specialized in IT, because if you're not an IT expert, it's really hard to hire persons that are IT experts. And so, yeah, that's will be my answer for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Max. I hope that answers the question. And now, yeah, obviously, yeah, you said it. It's very costly to have an IT department. But guess what? There's alternatives. I'm gonna sound a little salesy here, but obviously, companies like Advancio, where we can build a full team for you and start developing your new process, your digital transformation, and obviously do it at a better, obviously a better range. It's always good, and it's always great to have these options here. But I'll talk about that a little more later. I have a couple more questions here. So here's the next question that they put us here. What will be the step one to start a more active technologic immersion in my company?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that I partially answered that earlier with a good strategy I would suggest is that once you have like it could be a third party software that you're using to cover and the business, basically the business basic needs. And then you can start to find which is your specialization. Maybe you're so as I suggested earlier, so maybe your company is focused on intermodal shipments, for example, or maybe you are focused on local achievements. I don't know. And so what you can do is try to see which aspects do the tool you're using right now is hindering you, and try to build something custom made that is going to help you with that, at least with your process. Because in some sense, I have seen some companies that are more lean towards trying to um, have everything. People are really hard to start using custom tools, so they are attached a lot with Excel files, for example. And trying to have an Excel file share across multiple persons is an issue. So you can build something that is going to help you to share that information, which is not, for example, an Excel file. Maybe you only need to have a record of what times everything is happening, so you can have a small system that is focused on that, on reporting times, and having that maybe the date of appointment is going to close by, and once the date of appointment is by, you receive an email, so you are sure that the brokers are informed that something is happening, for example. And starting from that point, you can start to build a whole ecosystem. Can you try to see which other aspect of the process can be improved with technology, and based on that, you can start working to build all of the gaps. And once you have all the gaps filled, you can start thinking about replacing the tools, the third-party tools you're using, into something more tailor-made, basically. And step by step, you have a whole ecosystem that covers your business needs and is going to help you a lot to keep growing.
Perfect. Thank you, Max, for answering that question. And I believe I have one last one over here. So this one says, is technology able to track if any of my drivers have a security issue on the road?
Yeah. Well, there you can do a lot of stuff with technology, and only the imagination is like the limit, to be honest with you. So I think earlier I pointed to an example in which you can say that you have you are tracking a truck that is on the road, and you know it's a highway, and you know it's going to be a certain speed, basically. And once something happens, for example, that speed reduces a ton, you can have like an alert and say and try to alert that maybe something happened with the truck. You maybe want to communicate with the driver to see if everything's okay, for example. Or you can also have, for example, if you have a mobile app on which the drivers use to geolocate themselves, you can also have tools on there on which they can communicate with the brokers directly or with the company directly to ask for support or assistance of any kind. So yeah, basically, the sky is the limit. Once you have open channels of communication and you have tracking, you can start playing around with what tools you can build to support that.
Perfect. Thank you, Max. I believe we have another question over here, and I think it's in two parts. So the first part says, how compliant are truckers to applications and technology in general?
Mm, okay, that's a really interesting question. Basically, it's hard sometimes to make people install stuff on the cell phones. I know that because it's annoying, basically. But basically, it could be an agreement. So if you want to do business with us, you need to install that. Basically, that's as easy as that. If you want to have business with us, there are certain conditions you need to meet. And if you don't meet them, you don't have business with us. Um, so in that sense, once you're in that kind of agreement, you make sure that the drivers are compliant with the usage of it, and you can also have, for example, you can also incur into penalties. For example, if they're not using the app and certain conditions, you can play around with the legal stuff all you want. I'm not a specialist on that, sorry, but I know that certain companies that do this kind of stuff is based on agreements they have with the drivers. Basically, they need to install them because they don't have any other option if they want to do business with the company.
Right, perfect. And well, I believe you already answered the second part of the question, which was, how can we enforce a trucker to remember to check and log in data?
Yeah, basically there are multiple ways you can handle that. To be honest with you, so far I haven't dealt with that aspect of the business, but I know that is a necessity. Basically, is an enforcement that you need to do. You need to communicate. So, for example, you can have check-ins with the driver every so often to know that how they're doing. So, for example, you can have them communicate with the broker every so often, every so many hours to check in. And if the you can also have the system inform you that this driver is the middle of the day and the driver hasn't logged in, what's going on with them. You can communicate with them and ask them, hey, I know it's middle of the day and I'm sure you're working, but I don't see you in the system. So what's wrong, basically?
Basically, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. Thank you, Max. I believe that was last of the questions I had over here. Again, if you have any questions, people in the audience, you can just type it in, or if not, thank you, Max, for sharing your
Oh,
knowledge here today. I mean, you're amazing. You really know
oh,
about the industry, and I'm pretty sure that the content that you shared today is very valuable for the people in the audience today. So thank you once again for taking the time and being here today
no
in
problem.
another edition of Advancio Talks, man. We're so happy to have you. And guess what? So for people that joined the conversation today, I'd like to invite you to over to Advancio's website, where we have a digital transformation calculator. So it's a digital transformation tool. Basically, will be your first step in knowing what you need to do in order to to make that technological change in your company. And it's completely free. I just invite you to go into our Advancio's website, which is advancio.com/digital transformation tool, and you'll be just fill up the form, and you'll be in the first steps of modernizing your company and your processes. And for those that are registered, I mean, still go ahead and check the calculator in our website. And if you're registered, we'll be reaching out to you to see if we can help you over with your tech part. And as was mentioned in the during the conversation, adding an IT team could be very expensive, but obviously here at Van we have different solutions that can be cost effective and that can help you right away in your growth and in implementing your digital transformation. So you'll be reached out after this talk, and we can get starting conversations. Just get a free consultation, a demo, and we're going to give you more details on how your business can benefit from us. And I believe we have come to the end of another talk. I mean, this is amazing. I believe we're in the eighth episode. This is great. I'm really happy to have people joining this conversation. To our speakers, Max, thank you once again for being here today. To the staff that actually make these possible. I mean, it's not just me and my speakers talking. There's a whole team behind the screens actually making this possible every day. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to the Advancio team for allowing this conversation to happen. And there's nothing left for me to say to see you next month in another edition of Advancio Talks. Thank you, everybody.
See you all. Thank you.